Man, the Matrix doesn't give a fuck about rebels. It's not scared of some guy waving a sign, screaming into a phone camera, or pretending to be dangerous online. The Matrix built that. It funds that. It thrives on it. You think you're rebelling because you say, fuck the system, but the system printed the shirt you're wearing. The Matrix loves rebellion without intelligence. It turns it into content. What it truly fears are thinkers. Quiet, disciplined, dangerous thinkers. The ones who don't post, don't shout, don't flinch. They observe, they analyze, they understand. That's the difference between chaos and control. A rebel makes noise. A thinker makes moves. And the Matrix can't track a move it doesn't understand. That's why every real thinker becomes a target. Because thought is unpredictable. Thought creates power. When I was young, I saw how easily people could be programmed. The news told them what to fear. The schools told them what to believe. And entertainment told them how to act. Nobody thought for themselves. They just followed the script like trained fucking parrots repeating the same lines. I remember watching it and thinking there's no way all of this is real. Because deep down, I knew something was wrong. You can't look around and see billions of people sleepwalking through life, paying taxes, chasing money they'll never keep, and still believe the system's fair. It's not a mistake. It's a design. The Matrix doesn't care about your rebellion because rebellion is still inside its system. What it fears is when you step back, stop reacting, and start thinking. That's when you start seeing how deep the manipulation really goes. Man, thinking hurts. That's why most people avoid it. It's easier to get angry than it is to analyze. It's easier to post memes about the system than it is to actually study it. The Matrix built your distractions. It built your outrage. Every time you get emotional about politics, gossip, or bullshit trends, the Matrix wins. It doesn't want logic. It wants reactions. It feeds off chaos, so it lets you rebel safely while still plugged in. Think about it. They give you influencers who scream about freedom while selling you products made by the same corporations they claim to hate. That's not rebellion. That's marketing. The real rebellion is detachment. It's sitting in silence, turning off the noise, and asking the hard fucking questions. Who benefits when you're angry? Who profits when you're afraid? Who wins when you waste your time scrolling? The answer is always the same. Not you. When I started speaking out, I wasn't trying to be famous. I was trying to wake people up. I said the things no one else had the balls to say. That's what made the Matrix panic. It wasn't because I told people to fight. It was because I told them to think. I told men to question authority, to look beyond the news, to realize they were slaves in designer cages. And the Matrix hated that. They didn't ban me because I was loud. They banned me because I was effective. They knew thought spreads like fire. You light one mind, it lights another, and soon the whole fucking network burns. The Matrix can block accounts, but it can't block awareness. It can delete videos, but it can't delete truth once it's been seen. That's what makes a thinker unstoppable. You can silence a rebel. You can't silence a mind that's already free. Man, I've seen it firsthand. When they took everything. My platforms, my voice, my reputation. I didn't fold. I didn't panic. I sat back and thought. Because that's what separates a thinker from a reactor. A reactor screams when the world attacks. A thinker adapts. A thinker finds the next move. When the Matrix tried to destroy me, I didn't fight back emotionally. I fought back intelligently. I studied how they operate. Fear, narrative, repetition. That's how they keep you hypnotized. They repeat the same stories until your mind accepts it as truth. And most people believe it because they've never trained their minds to think critically. They mistake emotion for thought. They think loud equals right. It doesn't. Clarity does. Man, the truth is this. Rebels are replaceable. The Matrix loves a loud fool. It needs a villain to make the illusion of control believable. But thinkers, they're dangerous because they can't be controlled. They don't need validation, approval, or permission. They don't care about likes or applause. They care about power, truth, and understanding. The system can't buy that. It can't sedate that. So it fears it. You want to know why they censor truth speakers? Because thinking spreads faster than rebellion. You can shoot a rebel, but you can't kill an idea. You can silence a man, but you can't erase awareness. Once a man starts thinking, he becomes a glitch in the system, of a virus in the Matrix code. And that's exactly what they fear. When I tell people to escape the Matrix, I'm not talking about running away from society or living in the woods. I'm talking about mental escape, unplugging your brain from their program. The matrix doesn't live in the government or the banks or the media. It lives in your fucking mind. Every belief they planted in you is a leash. Every fact you never question is a cage. You break those one by thinking for yourself. That's why they train you not to. That's why school kills curiosity, why media drowns you in noise, and why modern life rewards distraction. Because a man who thinks is free. And freedom is bad for business. The system runs on obedience. Thinking destroys obedience. It creates leaders, creators, warriors, men who don't follow orders, men who make their own rules. That's what the Matrix fears. Look around. Fake rebels everywhere. Loud, dramatic, useless noise. People fighting over politics, genders, flags, hashtags. It's all theater. The Matrix built both sides so it never loses. You think you're fighting for justice, but you're fighting for attention. Real thinkers don't waste time arguing with bots. They're too busy building power, money, and influence. That's why you see me training daily, working constantly, improving endlessly. Because the real rebellion is evolution. Becoming so powerful they can't ignore you. So rich they can't cancel you. So disciplined they can't distract you. The Matrix doesn't fear rebels. It fears thinkers who evolve beyond its reach. Man, that's where it starts, with one thought. One moment of silence where you stop reacting and start observing. You'll see the Matrix everywhere. In ads and conversations, in your own habits. It's not invisible. It's in plain sight. But you can't see it if you don't think. Once you do, it's game over. You'll never look at life the same again. You'll see how controlled people are, how predictable, how programmed. And you'll realize you don't have to be one of them. You can think for yourself. That's real rebellion. Not breaking shit, not shouting online, but thinking clearly in a world that's built on lies. That's how you break free. That's how you win. Most people are terrified of silence because silence forces them to think. That's the first sign of control. When you can't sit still without noise. The Matrix engineered that shit perfectly. From the second you wake up, your phone is screaming for attention. The news is feeding you fear. The apps are pumping dopamine straight into your veins. You don't even get a second to hear your own fucking thoughts. That's how they win. They don't need to chain you to a wall. They just need to keep you busy enough to never question who built the room you're in. The system isn't made of bars. It's made of distractions. And every scroll, every click, every pointless argument is another link in that invisible chain. You think you're choosing your content, but your content is choosing you. It's training you to react, not to reflect. When I was broke, sitting in that little apartment in Luton, I realized how powerful silence is. No money, no fame, no distractions. Just raw thought. Most people would have gone insane. But that's when I learned the difference between surviving and evolving. I sat there and asked myself, why am I broke? Why am I average? Why do I feel powerless? And the truth hit me. Because I was playing a game built for me to lose. The system didn't care about my effort, my grind, or my loyalty. It cared about my obedience. It wanted me to keep working, keep paying, keep hoping, just enough to stay asleep. So I stopped playing. I didn't rebel. I recalculated. I studied. I thought like the people who owned the casino. That's when I started winning. See, thinking is a weapon the Matrix can't defend against. When you think, you step outside emotion. You stop reacting to the puppet show and start watching the strings. You realize how predictable people are. They'll rage over politics, gossip, celebrity bullshit, but they'll never rage over their own slavery. They'll argue for hours online, defending people who wouldn't piss on them if they were on fire. And that's the Matrix masterpiece. Emotional puppetry. The moment you learn to detach emotion from thought, you break their control. They can't manipulate a man who isn't addicted to outrage. They can't distract a man who knows where his energy goes. That's why I say the Matrix doesn't fear anger. It fears awareness. You see, the Matrix gives you fake freedom just to keep you loyal. They say you can speak your mind, but only if your thoughts align with their script. You can chase money, but only within their system. You can chase women, but only if you play by their social rules. Every so-called choice is a pre-approved option. It's like being given a list of menu items at a restaurant that they own. You can pick whatever the fuck you want, but you're still paying them. That's how deep the programming runs. And the scariest part? Most people love it. They defend their slavery. They'll fight for their favorite side, their favorite party, their favorite brand, not realizing it's all the same pyramid. The Matrix doesn't divide people to control them. It divides them to distract them. When I built my first business, everyone told me it wouldn't work. Be realistic, Andrew. They said, get a stable job. But I knew the truth. Realistic is code for stay average. The Matrix trains people to settle. It rewards mediocrity with comfort and punishes ambition with fear. And you'll see it. The moment you start to rise, people around you will panic. They'll try to talk you down, not because they care about you, but because your growth exposes their weakness. That's why I tell every man, stop asking for approval. You don't need permission to think differently. You don't need validation to rise above the herd. The Matrix wants you thinking small because small thinkers are safe. They never question, never challenge, never escape. Look, I've seen rebels come and go. Loud men, angry men shouting about revolution. They get clicks, they get headlines, and then they vanish. You know why? Because rebellion without intellect is predictable. The Matrix anticipates chaos. It thrives on it. The moment you throw a punch, they already know where it'll land. But they can't predict strategy. That's why I tell my followers, don't just fight, study. Don't just react, understand. The system is ancient, but it's not invincible. It depends on your ignorance. The second you start thinking strategically, financially, socially, spiritually, you break free. The Matrix isn't scared of emotion. It's terrified of precision. A man who moves with logic is untouchable. Listen, man, I used to think freedom meant doing whatever I wanted. Fast cars, fast women, big houses. That's what I chased. But when I finally got it, I realized something brutal. Freedom isn't the ability to do what you want. It's the discipline to never be controlled again. The Matrix doesn't trap you with chains. It traps you with indulgence. It offers you pleasure, convenience, entertainment until you're too soft to resist. They don't need to take your power if you give it away willingly. That's why I live with intensity. Every day is training. Every moment is clarity. Because once you see the Matrix, you realize you're not fighting it. You're escaping it. And that's where thinkers rise above rebels. Rebels fight symptoms. Thinkers cure the disease. They build wealth that doesn't depend on banks. They train bodies that don't rely on pills. They create networks that bypass systems. That's what real power looks like, independence. When I teach men to become powerful, I'm not telling them to attack the Matrix. I'm telling them to make the Matrix irrelevant. You don't destroy the game by breaking the rules. You destroy it by building a better one. You want to know why most people never wake up? Because thinking requires courage. It takes balls to admit you've been lied to your whole life. It takes strength to accept that your teachers, your idols, your heroes, they were all just pawns. People would rather stay comfortable than face the truth. The Matrix counts on that. It feeds on cowardice disguised as contentment. I'm just living my life, they say, while living a life someone else designed. That's not living. That's existing in high definition. The thinkers, though, they don't just see through the illusion. They act. They detach from emotion, question everything, and rebuild from scratch. That's why they win. That's why the Matrix fears them. Because once a man starts thinking, he becomes impossible to control. And an army of thinkers, that's a revolution they can't stop. You ever notice how the Matrix gives you just enough freedom to feel free, but never enough to actually be free? That's the brilliance of the illusion. They don't chain your body anymore. They chain your mind. They figured out that physical rebellion is easy to crush, but mental rebellion, that's fucking dangerous. So instead of fighting you, they distract you. They let you believe you're winning while they keep resetting the scoreboard. That's the scam. Fake victories. They let you taste success so you'll stay loyal. A small raise, a like on your post, a weekend off, crumbs from the table. And you celebrate it like a feast. Meanwhile, the real winners, the ones who think are building empires while you're dancing for dopamine. That's how the Matrix keeps the herd calm. Give them comfort. Give them hope. Give them enough light so they never notice the cage. When I was a fighter, I learned something the Matrix never wanted me to know. No, control doesn't come from strength. It comes from awareness. In the ring, every amateur fighter wastes his energy trying to look powerful. They swing too hard. They breathe too fast. They panic too soon. But a real fighter, he's calm. He observes. He thinks. He knows that chaos only destroys the man who reacts to it. That's how I live my whole life. The Matrix throws chaos at me, bans, media attacks, lies. And I stay calm. I analyze. I calculate my next strike. That's what thinking does. It turns panic into precision. Most men can't do that because they've been trained to react emotionally. They think the loudest man wins, but in reality, the calmest man controls the room. Look, the Matrix sells rebellion like it sells energy drinks. Mass-produced, packaged, and fucking fake. You're allowed to fight the system as long as you never question who owns the fight. You're allowed to speak truth to power as long as your truth doesn't touch real power. It's all theater. The Matrix owns both sides of every war. Political, social, digital, every protest, every hashtag, every trending outrage is designed to keep your mind busy. They don't want peace. They want perpetual conflict. Conflict creates confusion, and confusion kills thought. That's why real thinkers are rare. They don't play sides. They study the game. They ask who benefits, and that single question is more dangerous than any weapon. Because the moment you ask it, the illusion cracks. Listen, man, I've met billionaires, politicians, powerful men. You know what they all have in common? They understand the Matrix but never admit it. They laugh when people talk about freedom because they know the rules. Freedom is an illusion sold to slaves who think they're players. The rich don't play the game the same way. They design it, they print the money, write the laws, and control the narrative. You think your opinion matters? They built the platform you're shouting from. You think you're rebelling by not voting? They win either way. The Matrix doesn't care who you choose. It only cares that you keep choosing. Because every time you engage, you feed it. The only real escape is detachment. Stop reacting. Stop playing. Observe, learn, evolve. That's the move they can't predict. You see, most men are addicted to illusion. They want to believe that working harder will set them free. If I just grind longer, if I just save more, if I just behave, they say. But that's the trap. The Matrix rewards obedience, not intelligence. You're not paid for your time. You're paid to stay in line. That's why they invented the dream. A house, a car, a pension. The dream is the leash. It keeps you chasing something they own. And every time you get close, they move the goalpost. Inflation, taxes, new regulations. There's always another layer of control. Thinking breaks that spell. Once you realize the dream was never yours, you stop chasing and start building. You stop hoping for freedom and start earning it. Back when I first got rich, people thought I got lucky. They didn't see the years of study, the sleepless nights, the obsession with patterns. I studied the system not to destroy it, but to understand it. Because once you understand the Matrix, you can beat it at its own fucking game. You can turn its rules into your advantage. That's what thinking does. It gives you leverage. Rebels scream at the casino for being unfair. Thinkers learn how the cards are counted. They find the loopholes, exploit the algorithms, and walk away with the winnings. That's why the Matrix fears thinkers. Because thinkers become unpredictable. You can't control what you can't predict. The system doesn't want you to think for yourself. It wants you to outsource your thoughts. That's why the world is addicted to experts. Trust the science, trust the news, trust the data. Fuck that. Trust your eyes. Trust your instincts. Trust what you can prove. The moment you stop trusting yourself, you hand the Matrix your mind on a silver platter. Every algorithm, every institution, every authority, they feed on that trust. They say it's for your safety, but it's really for their control. They don't need to brainwash you if you willingly give them access. Every app you open, every opinion you echo, every click you make, you're volunteering your mind for programming. The Matrix doesn't want strong men. It wants comfortable ones. Men who are too tired to question, too entertained to think, too sedated to care. That's why modern culture glorifies weakness. You can't control lions, but you can train sheep. And once the herd learns to fear the wolves, they'll thank the shepherd for the fence. That's the ultimate psychological trick. Law make men afraid of freedom, and they'll beg for protection. That's why thinking is the ultimate rebellion. Because when you think, you destroy fear. When you understand how the Matrix works, you realize that the only power it has is the power you give it. Look, man, I've been through their traps. I've seen the censorship, the media lies, the fake charges, the digital execution. They tried to bury me, but I refused to die. because I knew what was happening. I saw the Matrix trying to pull me back into silence. But when you think clearly, fear disappears. You stop reacting emotionally and you start moving strategically. That's why they can't stop me, because I don't play their emotional games. I don't feed their narrative. I control my own. That's what thinking gives you. Control over your reality. Thinking isn't just rebellion, it's liberation. The Matrix doesn't crumble when you fight it. It collapses when you outgrow it. When you stop living by its rules, when you stop believing its lies, when you stop reacting to its bait. That's when you win. You can't destroy something that feeds on your attention. You starve it by walking away. That's what the Matrix fears. Not noise, not riots, but silence. The silence of a man who no longer plays. The silence of a man who's building his own empire while the rest of the world argues over nonsense. That silence is the loudest threat of all. You ever wonder why the Matrix spends so much time making you comfortable? Because comfort is the softest kind of prison. No bars, no guards, no visible cage. Just warm lights, endless entertainment, and a slow death of your drive. The Matrix doesn't fear your anger. It fears your clarity. It doesn't want you to explode. It wants you to relax. It wants you fat, distracted, half awake, scrolling through fake lies while your own slips away. Comfort kills more men than war ever did. You don't even feel it happening. One day you wake up 35, gut-hanging dreams gone, and you call it happiness. But look around. The Matrix built that for you. The couch, the job, the subscription, the weekend escape. Every piece of your life is a product they designed to make sure you never wake the fuck up. When I was broke in Luton, I didn't have the luxury of comfort. I didn't have a soft bed or a nice car or fake friends to clap when I failed. I had pain. And pain is the greatest teacher the Matrix tries to erase. When you're in pain, you think, you analyze, you adapt. That's why the system floods you with comfort. Because a man in pain starts asking dangerous questions. A man who's too comfortable stops asking anything. That's why every modern man is sedated. Porn, fast food, alcohol, cheap validation, all of it's designed to soften you. The Matrix doesn't care how free you think you are, as long as you're too comfortable to fight. They don't want warriors, they want consumers. Look, man, when I started fighting, I didn't do it because I wanted trophies. I did it because I wanted control. I wanted to test the edges of my limits to see what I was truly made of. Most men will never feel that. They'll never stand across from someone who's trained to hurt them, never taste blood in their mouth, never feel the silence before the bell. You know why? Because the Matrix made sure they'd never experience true struggle. True struggle creates strength. Strength creates awareness. Awareness breeds freedom. That's the chain reaction the system fears the most. They want you weak, not because it keeps you safe, but because it keeps you dependent. A weak man can't think clearly. He's too busy chasing comfort. Listen, the Matrix feeds you the illusion of choice. Work-life balance, self-care. Take time for yourself. It sounds good, doesn't it? But it's fucking poison wrapped in positivity. They want you balanced because a focused man is dangerous. They want you relaxed because an ambitious man is uncontrollable. They tell you to slow down because a man moving fast might escape the cage. Every time they say, take it easy, they're whispering, stay average. You think they care about your mental health? No. They care about your obedience. They'd rather see you scrolling, jerking off, and eating chips than reading, training, and building empires. The reason I survived the Matrix attacks, the bans, the lies, the propaganda, is because I built myself through struggle. Pain forged my focus. When they shut me out, I adapted. When they silenced me, I spoke louder. When they buried me, I dug tunnels. You can't kill a man who's trained himself to thrive in discomfort. That's what I teach my men. Learn to live in the fire. Don't pray for easy days. Pray for clarity under pressure. Because that's what separates thinkers from rebels. Rebels scream when it burns. Thinkers build in the smoke. The Matrix has one golden rule. Never let a man think he can live without it. That's why they sell you dependence disguised as success. They tell you to finance the car, lease the house, owe the bank. They tell you that credit is freedom, that stability is strength. But what they're really doing is wrapping you in velvet chains. You'll never rebel against a system that makes your slavery feel luxurious. You'll defend it. You'll brag about it. Look at my job, my car, my house, all of it rented from the Matrix. All of it gone the second you stop obeying. That's not success. That's captivity with Wi-Fi. You see, man, when I talk about breaking free, I don't mean living in a cave. I mean mastering the game so the game can't master you. Comfort isn't the enemy. Dependency is. You can enjoy the spoils of war, but you better remember the war. Every man should be ready to walk away from everything tomorrow. That's freedom. That's what the Matrix fears. A man who can rebuild from zero is unbreakable. The system can take your money, your fame, your platform, but it can't take your discipline. Discipline is the antidote to comfort. It's the one thing they can't sell you. You have to build it in blood and silence. The Matrix knows that most men will never chase discipline because it's not sexy. They want quick results, fast fixes, easy wins. They don't want to bleed for it. They want to buy it. That's why every ad, every product, every influencer sells shortcuts. Get fit in 30 days. Make money in a week. Find happiness now. All bullshit. Real growth is slow, painful, lonely. That's why it's valuable. That's why the system hides it behind distractions. Because if every man knew that freedom lives on the other side of discomfort, the Matrix would crumble overnight. Look, man, every empire I've built came from discomfort. Every victory was born from boredom, struggle, and pain. While others were chasing pleasure, I was chasing control. While they were numbing their minds, I was sharpening mine. And now I see them. Men trapped in golden cages, scrolling through fake lives, thinking they're free. They laugh at discipline like it's outdated. But when the world collapses, and it always fucking does, they'll be the first to break. Because they've never suffered by choice. They've never trained their mind to thrive in pain. And when the Matrix shifts again, they won't know how to survive without its comfort. The truth is this. Comfort is the most dangerous addiction in the world. It robs you of urgency, dulls your instincts, kills your hunger. The Matrix doesn't need to beat you. It just needs to soothe you. It gives you just enough dopamine to keep you docile. That's how they win. And that's why you need to starve the comfort. Reject easy pleasures. Seek pain. Train your body, train your mind, train your spirit. Because when you can sit in discomfort and still move forward, you become unstoppable. You become something the Matrix can't predict, can't control, can't kill. You want to destroy the Matrix? Then stop feeding it your weakness. Stop handing it your focus, your time, your drive. Every time you skip training, every time you choose comfort over purpose, you're building the cage yourself. The Matrix doesn't imprison you. You imprison yourself through comfort. The minute you understand that, you become free. Freedom isn't pleasure, it's power. And power only belongs to men who are willing to suffer for it. You ever notice how the Matrix collapses when you stop obeying its rules? It's not magic. It's mathematics. The system survives because you feed it attention, emotion, and time. The moment you withdraw those, it starves. That's what thinking does, man. It breaks the spell. You start seeing the wires behind the illusion. The game isn't hard, it's just rigged. And once you know it's rigged, you stop playing fair. That's when life changes. The Matrix can't defeat a man who refuses to participate. That's why I say, stop rebelling, start recalculating. Rebellion is noise. Calculation is freedom. The Matrix doesn't fear loud men. It fears silent ones who think, plan, and execute. Listen, when I was broke, everything around me was screaming the same message. Obey, get a degree, get a job, settle down. That's the programming. That's what they feed every man. And I followed it for a while. I played by their rules. I worked like a dog, paid taxes, kept my head down. And the more I obeyed, the poorer I got. That's when I realized the game wasn't built for players. It was built for owners. They don't reward obedience with freedom. They reward it with dependence. The harder you work in their system, the deeper you sink into it. So I stopped obeying. I built my own tables. And once I did, the Matrix started glitching. Bans, censorship, media attacks. You know why? Because I wasn't rebelling. I was thinking. And a man who thinks is a fucking threat. The Matrix survives through predictability. It knows what you'll click, what you'll buy, who you'll vote for, even when you'll get depressed. It doesn't guess. It calculates. Every digital footprint you leave feeds its algorithm. It studies your fears, your weaknesses, your desires. That's why comfort is dangerous. The more predictable your habits, the easier you are to control. Wake up, scroll, work, eat, watch, sleep. That's the routine of a slave. Thinking breaks that loop. When you start questioning your patterns, when you disrupt your own rhythm, you confuse the system. And confusion is chaos to the matrix. That's why meditation, discipline, focus, all that shit they mock, are acts of rebellion. You can't control a man who controls himself. See, the matrix doesn't want you powerful. It wants you useful. It wants your labor, your data, your obedience. That's why they pump fear into your bloodstream every day. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of being different. Because fear keeps you predictable. I used to feel that fear too. When I first started talking online, I knew what was coming. Hate, attacks, censorship. But I didn't care. Because I'd already detached from the outcome. That's what thinkers do. They move with intent, not emotion. You can't cancel a man who doesn't need your approval. You can't silence a man who speaks his own truth. The matrix can shut down your accounts, but it can't shut down your mind. Look, man, I see so many people chasing validation. They want followers, likes, applause. They want to be seen. That's how the matrix hooks them. You can't enslave a man who's invisible, so they teach you to crave visibility. They make you brand yourself, post your life, share your thoughts, expose your patterns, all voluntarily. You think you're building a platform. You're building a prison. Every time you crave attention, the matrix learns how to control you. That's why I built my empire off independence. I don't need validation. I need results. I don't want followers. I want men who think. Because 100 thinkers are worth more than 1,000,000 sheep. The matrix loves rebellion because rebellion can be redirected. Anger is easy to manipulate. But thought spreads like fire. Once one man sees through the illusion, he teaches others how to see. That's why I tell men, don't fight the matrix with fists. Fight it with focus. Build your wealth. Master your body. Control your emotions. When you reach that level of discipline, you become an anomaly in their code. The system doesn't know what to do with you. It can't tempt you, can't scare you, can't buy you. That's the point. To become ungovernable, not through chaos, but through clarity. When I was locked up, they thought I'd break. They thought they'd silence me with isolation. But that was their biggest mistake. Isolation is where the weak crumble, but it's where the thinkers ascend. You strip away distraction, you strip away comfort. And what's left? You and your mind. And when you master that, you're unstoppable. I trained, I read, I thought. I mapped every move, every truth, every flaw in their system. I walked out sharper, calmer, stronger. That's why they fear me. Because I'm proof that thinking cannot be caged. You can imprison the body, but not the mind. You see, man, every empire falls because thinkers rise. History proves it. Every dictatorship, every tyrant, every corrupt system, all of them crumble when enough men start thinking. That's why they poison thought before it begins. They flood the youth with distraction, drugs, and dopamine. They destroy father figures, mock masculinity, and celebrate weakness. Because a generation that can't think can't rebel. That's the Matrix endgame. Not to kill you, but to neuter your potential. To make sure you live your whole life never realizing how powerful you could have been. The irony is that the Matrix doesn't even hide the truth. It tells you everything. It laughs in your face. You can watch documentaries, read books, see corruption, and still people won't act. You know why? Because knowledge without courage is useless. Thinking without action is masturbation. That's why I preach discipline. Because thought without movement changes nothing. You have to think and then do. You have to see the game, then play it better than anyone else. That's when you become dangerous. That's when you stop being a pawn and start becoming a player. Look, man, the Matrix fears thinkers not because they destroy it, but because they make it irrelevant. When enough men build their own systems, their own money, their own mindset, their own brotherhood, the old one collapses. That's the revolution. Not noise, not riots, not chaos. Quiet, calculated dominance. The Matrix isn't beaten with slogans. It's beaten with sovereignty. A free man isn't loud. He's dangerous in silence. He doesn't need to prove anything. He doesn't need attention. He doesn't need approval. He just moves and the world shifts around him. That's what I want men to understand. Freedom isn't given, it's earned. You earn it with discipline, clarity, and pain. You earn it by thinking when others are distracted, by acting when others are afraid, by standing when others kneel. The matrix will always exist, but it can't enslave a man who's built his own mind. That's why the world will keep producing slaves. But the few who think, they'll become gods. Not gods over others, but gods over themselves. Masters of their time, their focus, their destiny. That's what true power looks like. And that's why the matrix fears thinkers. Because once a man learns to think, he never fucking kneels again.